Smart Cities Committee for the date of May 2nd is now, May 2nd, 3rd? 2nd is now in session. All right. Review the work plan. There's a recommendation to defer the digital privacy policy update until June 6th.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. No consent calendar. Let's move on to the first item. Kip Dolan, take it away.
Great, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members, members of the public, and city staff. Dolan Beckel here, Director of the Office of Civic Innovation, joined in the front box by Deputy City Manager Kip Harkness and Smart City Manager Reggie Nair. Keeping my commitment to Chair Dieppe to increase the level of infotainment at this committee meeting, I am excited to announce that we're going to, one, have another Smart City quiz for our committee, but much more importantly, we're going to see our first ever live demonstration of Internet Things capability being delivered to the community today. No screenshots, no video recordings, no test software, but actual demonstration of actual software controlling city infrastructure out at Seven Trees Park today. In this case, we'll be demonstrating the ubiquitous smart lighting controller and community Wi-Fi platform recently installed at Seven Trees Park Community Center and Library. But you will have to hold your excitement and suspend your disbelief until later in the committee. So let's walk through our agenda. Pretty straightforward. We'll begin with a Smart City Roadmap update, and then we're going to highlight one of the big rocks from our Smart City Roadmap, the city's IoT strategy and implementation. So here to present our first report on the Smart City Roadmap is Reggie Nair.
Thank you, Dolan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, and members of the public. My name is Reggie Nair, Smart City Manager. So the roadmap that we presented to the committee and members of the public back in March is our baseline to show our progress as these projects move towards green and eventually to completion. Where we are for the month of May, we are making progress in executing these projects. I want to highlight one change in status for this month, which is the Cybersecurity Policy, which moved from red to green. Yes, very exciting, thank you. Later in the presentation, I will share more details about this project. So what you can see with these monthly bar charts, it demonstrates our performance measure, and through it shows we're making incremental progress collectively, but we're moving in a positive direction towards green. What has been a constant source in attributing to our success is the implementation of the Agile framework, recognizing the effort of our teams, what they're doing, and helping them alleviate roadblocks, but most important, keeping the rigor to report to you all on our updates. So for the month of May, there are 19 projects, about 50% that are now green status, 12 projects which are about 32% that still remain yellow, and now 6 projects, about 15% are red status, with 1 project, 3% that is gray, and will remain in hold. Per your comment, Councilmember Davis, we'll call out any change of status for ease of reference that you see on the right side of the slide. So for the next few slides, I will focus only on the red status projects and share what was changed and what corrective course of actions that will be taken for the month of May to get these projects back on track. The next few slides will highlight the 6 projects that are at risk and 1 project that's on hold. So for reference for the committee and the members of the public is that what's highlighted in purple indicates what's have changed since last month's meeting. And for the integrated permitting system, the project is making amazing great strides and moving towards green. Last week, the integrated permitting system team completed their presentation project status to the ad hoc committee for housing construction and development service, and it was very well received. However, the project still remains red, mainly because they need to seek council's approval in June to amend a contract with their vendor to proceed further. And so, per your feedback, Councilmember Jones, we're adding the look ahead. So hopefully this will give a purview as to what we're planning in the future. So for this project, particularly next month, we'll have a deep dive about the progress of this project and then also hear from the team. So my San Jose, under the resolution approach, due to the challenges with existing procurement backlogs and the core team's pivot to focus on the launch of the city website, the schedule is no longer valid. However, there are corrective course of actions that will be taken to keep this project moving forward. So for the month of May, the goal is to hire a project manager. Also, the project team will be seeking council's approval in June to amend an existing contract with the vendor to provide ongoing support for the existing My San Jose version being used. Looking ahead, also the committee and the members of the public will be hearing more in depth about the progress of this project. Data strategy. We mentioned last month that we were very successful in hiring a Chief Data Fellow, Srinivas Uppaluri, through the Fuse Fellow program. He and a few others will be onboarding next Monday, and you will be fortunate to see a virtual video of our future Fuse Fellow at the end of this presentation. So for the look ahead on this particular project, we will be presenting the data strategy late in spring 2020. So for the IT infrastructure modernization, the contract did take a little bit longer than expected, and finance is very close into finalizing it. It should be completed by May. Once the project is finalized, IT department will begin the kickoff for the project. So the look ahead for this one, since this has impacted the schedule in starting the project, IT anticipates to come back to the committee in the fall of 2020. Advanced cybersecurity RFP and policy. So both the RFP and the development of the policy for cybersecurity is a very complex process due to just the sheer nature of it. The RFP is very close to being completed and will be released in May. The policy, after 22 iterations, has finally completed and has been uploaded, and so that's why this project goes to green. So deserves more than a green. So looking ahead, this project team will report an update to the committee spring of 2020 on cybersecurity. Access Eastside, under the resolution approach in March, we were able to activate the community Wi-Fi with the James Lick attendance area. The city reviewed the educational outcomes evaluation and approved the Eastside Union High School District's approach. And looking ahead, we plan to come back to the committee in the fall of 2019 to provide an update. The business tax system. As I mentioned last month, this project will be put on hold until the business tax amnesty project is completed. But the team was able to memorialize the lessons learned on the business tax system between finance and IT for future RFP issuance. So looking ahead, until the business tax project is reactivated, it is to be determined when the team will report back to the committee, but we'll keep you posted on that. So for the committee's awareness and members of the public, the number of initiating projects are increasing since last month I shared this list, partly because budgets or contracts are in progress last month, and now it's being close to being finalized. As a reminder, once the budget is approved, a dedicated team of staff is identified, and if required, a signed contract that defines the scope and schedule. I will add these projects to the roadmap. So August is when I intend to do the roadmap refresh for these projects. Oh, and just for reference, the ones that are highlighted in purple, the boxes, those are the ones that I've added since the last month. Thank you. So for the small wonders, these are the small wonder projects that are currently in progress, and no new updates at this time for these specific projects. However, we wanted to share with the committee and the public an approach recommended by the mayor's team in steering towards a challenge-based approach for the small wonders. These challenges, in addition to the other refined list of small wonder projects I shared with the committee back in February, will be included in the backlog for review and prioritization. I will admit I am a bit behind schedule in going through the prioritization, so it's on me. But in the next coming weeks, with my ongoing coordination with the Mayor's Office of Innovation and Technology, and then also Technology and Innovation, and also the Civic Innovation teams, to prioritize all these small wonders, ideas, projects, or challenges by using the weighted shortest job method first, and then determine if an appropriate, whether it remains as a small wonder or a big rock. Another good note, we wanted to share some very wonderful news and celebrate with the committee and the public about the great recognition our innovators are receiving, and we hope to increase an ongoing victory list for the future. The first project is a central emergency vehicle preemption project that DOT presented along with police and fire last fall, and it got applause from the committee, that focused on the reducing emergency response time. They are the winner of the 2019 International Data Corporation Smart City Award for the transportation category for connected autonomous vehicle, public transit, ride hailing, and ride sharing. So pretty great. The second project that was also presented by DOT in collaboration with IT and Urban Logic in March is a photo of the core team who received a Technology Smart City Merit Award for data-driven innovation from American Planning Association. And last but not least, our very own CIO, Rob Lloyd, has been nominated as a finalist for CIO of the Year Award, which recognizes an individual executive representing an enterprise adopter of IoT for their outstanding leadership in IoT. The finalists will be announced on May 15th at the Internet of Things Conference, which is one of the largest IoT events in North America, where over 12,000 people attend, and the organization has a global audience of 23 million IoT professionals, so no small thing. So there is time to vote, if I can, for Rob. So
Can we all vote?
yes, you may.
Oh, excellent.
All right, members of the public too. All right,
Can you send us a link?
will do.
Yeah.
And in fairness to Rob, he pleaded us not to put this up here, but since I am the final editor, I put it in and added the additional comments. Sorry, Rob.
Resistance is futile. It's very futile.
All right, and I will conclude my presentation with a virtual introduction of our future fellows who will get work done starting Monday. Oh no, that was not too fast. Told me 2 clicks.
And their work is done.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Russell Rogers. I'm excited to be working with the government of San Jose on the Safe City project using data and technology to improve safety of the city. My background is in innovation. I've worked in startups as well as large organizations. I'm also a member of the military here based in the Bay Area, focused on emergency management. So I'm excited to meet all of you and do a great job on this project together. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Srinivas Uppaluri. I come with a background in enterprise information management and program management for medium and large scale enterprises. I am really excited to be taking on this role of Chief Data Officer, on helping out, the city of San Jose to really enable and help the people of the city. Thank you.
Hi team, this is Takir Bashir. Thank you for the opportunity for me to work on bringing community Wi-Fi to San Jose. My background is management consulting. Prior to that, I was an engineer, and looking forward to joining the team next Monday and doing some good progress. Thank you.
So Chair, that's it. Back to you for questions and public comment.
Councilmember Davis?
Thank you. My question's about the My San Jose app, and I understand that 2.0 is delayed, but in terms of, it says focus immediate efforts on usability improvements and back-end process improvements with service teams. Thank you. Can we get some more specifics about that? I continue to get people who have items that are closed immediately after they open them with no explanation. Is that going to change? And then also I've had multiple people who have written into me who have done something under a general request and been told, oh, sorry, you need to call X department. And then they give them the phone number. And my understanding was both of those things were going to be changing in the 1.x. What's the schedule for those two things?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Davis, Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Tong. I'm the Digital Services Lead in the Office of Civic Innovation, and in that capacity, I also act as product owner for My San Jose. So in response to your question, Yes, we've been working on ongoing usability improvements in 1.x, as well as back-end process improvements. And we will be coming to the committee actually next month at the June committee with a full report on that body of work, as well as other improvements that we're looking at. We actually just released in April version 1.7 of the app, which implements some key usability improvements in terms of helping to better set expectations with residents on the services. So for example, there are now service definitions for each service to help residents understand what the different categories mean. And then after each request is submitted, residents will now see the expected turnaround time for that service. So that's helping to set expectations in terms of when they can expect to hear back from the city. With respect to the feedback that you expressed from your residents in terms of seeing service requests that are closed with apparently no explanation, or feeling like they're being routed to other departments. Those are issues that we are aware of and tracking, and we'd love to meet with you to understand more specifically about what you're hearing from your residents and how we can address that in future updates within 1.x and also in 2.0.
Will the explanations for closed, we had talked about many months ago, we had talked about rather than just having a status open, in progress, and closed, but the closed would actually say closed, routed to a different governmental agency, closed, resolved, etc. There were going to be 3 or 4 or 5 explanations for that in the status. Is that under construction? Is that in progress? What's happening with that?
That is not currently under construction. We actually do have a referred status that's not currently widely being used. So there is a potential business process improvement that we can explore that would involve changing the process that all of the teams use in terms of how they close out the requests. Currently, the different service teams are at different stages in terms of their protocol for communicating. So certain teams do have detailed comments that are provided along with the closure, and those are sent out via email. We believe in some cases the issues may be that there's so many emails coming at the residents that they're seeing the closed, but they're not necessarily seeing the comment that explains why that is, and that's something that we believe we need to address.
So they get 2 separate emails in that case?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So it's not this was closed and then there's the notes in the same email. They'll get this was closed and then a second email if there are notes?
That's correct. The way that the system is currently configured, they get an email for the closed status and then a separate email for the comment. The closed email will say what the last comment is. So they should have that coupled, and that's an improvement we made in a prior, I believe, version 1.5. And we believe there are additional usability issues in that, it's sometimes people won't necessarily catch that there's 2 different emails, or the timing of those emails may make it so that they're not getting the right information at the right time.
Okay, and then in terms of the other issue where they're being told to call some other department, my understanding is that's a process issue. Where are we in training whoever's responding to those requests to just route the requests as opposed to having the constituent or the resident have to do multiple touches with the city?
Yes, looking at, citywide, the different processes for internal referrals is something that's also on our roadmap that we are actually planning to look at this quarter. In terms of the current state, it really depends on which team is involved with the request and what their current standard process is for intaking requests. And there are some teams for certain issues such as traffic signal outages where they've indicated a preference for receiving those over the phone so that they can respond to them more immediately than having reports that are very urgent being trapped in an email. So there are certain cases currently where there are cases where the way that the team intakes the request to be able to act on it does involve calling through a phone number. And we can look into what all of those teams are and whether it's possible to route those in a more streamlined way. and each of those is its own business process improvement project.
I understand that. I think because 2.0 is delayed, which, so my residents are heavy users of the My San Jose app, and I've promoted it heavily. And so when they're frustrated with the app, they're less likely to continue to use it. So I think if we can focus on the business processes, which is something that's in our control while we're waiting for the RFP and the 2.0, I think that will increase trust in the app, because they don't understand that it's not the app, right? They don't care either way, even if they did understand it. So if we can continue to build trust in the app through the back-end business process improvements, I think that would be helpful, so that we can continue to build usage of this tool, which I think has been, at least it's been very helpful in getting many potholes filled in my district, for example. But the general requests have, I think, I only get responses about or complaints about the general request and the way that that's been handled.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. That's very valuable feedback for us.
Thanks.
Mayor Liccardo?
I just want to thank you guys for all the progress. It's really great to see. It's always a happy day when red turns to green. So thank you for that. And on the integrated permitting system, I think I comprehended the magnitude of challenge here, but is it really stalled until the update to council and vote, or are there things we can do in parallel while council approves?
I would say, Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager and Executive Sponsor for the Development Services Transformation, we are moving rapidly along with a quarterly set of objectives in parallel. We're not waiting on anything, but there are two key council decisions. One is around the amendment to the contract, and the other is around a budget request to fully fund the team over the next 9 to 12 months. And if either of those is a no, or we've done our work incorrectly on those, then the project, we can't meet the schedule we've set. So we're not waiting for those decisions by any means, but we wanted to highlight the red because of the importance of those two critical decisions coming in June to council.
Okay, so there is some progress happening.
Yeah, we've had a green quarter, and what we actually had a fair amount of internal debate over whether this should be yellow or even green, and we kept it as red because those two primary decisions haven't been made by the decision makers, which in this case is you on the council, and until that's done, we don't feel we can say everything's okay.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that, Kip. Helps me understand better. I know we've got yellow light projects that have challenges, and I just ask if there are things that are within the council's control, like whether it's a budgetary issue or a policy issue of some kind. It may be helpful if you guys identified what those obstacles are for us, so then we can decide, well, maybe we should try to do something to get out of the way.
Absolutely, and just to give a very top line on this, if I were to say what's the top obstacle on things that are red and yellow here, at this point it's procurement.
Yeah.
And it's the complexity of doing IT procurement, and that's a combination of both more items to procure, more complex ones, and technology changing, as well as limited staff and the horsepower to prioritize appropriately. Right. We've got some proposals on that, but it's almost I'd say at least a third, if not 2/3 of the items that are up there are actually backlogged because of procurement issues at this point.
Understood. And I get the fact it's been an intense pain point for us for a while. I know you've been working on it, and I guess let me just ask in very broad terms, is this something that the council can either help through policy change or through budget?
Yes. Dolan, do you want to take a little bit more detail on that, since you're actually working with Julie and others to lead this?
Sure. So the integrated permitting system is obviously a very important project. What we're putting together with the procurement, what we're piloting right now with the airport actually is a procurement prioritization process and a procurement prioritization board. So we will be, we're piloting a different way of working procurements so that direction from council, alignment with council priorities or alignment with city manager priorities help prioritize a project higher in its list so it gets worked faster and works sooner. And that we're piloting that actually with the airport right now, and we're going to be rolling that out to the city probably in the month of June. So that's one way in which your feedback and your priorities to us will help prioritize which projects we work first.
Well, and the other thing I'd say on the policy front, there are a couple of policy changes, some of which may be within our control, some of which we may need to come back to you. I'll give two concrete examples. One is the threshold at which we do procurements. Increasingly, we're having to do procurements for fairly small things, which we believe the technology is mature on, which we could actually just go ahead and buy.
Yeah.
And then the other one is as we move into software as a service and a combination of hardware and software as a service, our separation historically between product procurement and service procurement no longer really reflects the reality in the technology field. I don't procure a product and then separately go procure a service. They are often bundled, and those types of procurements are particularly difficult, and each one, it requires us a kind of a bespoke example and a workaround with our system, whereas we'd like to have the ability to do a much more straightforward procurement, as I think our procurement folks would be, but they're doing their job in following policy. So I think as we do this work, part of what we want to bring forward is a top 2 or 3 policy changes that will streamline the work while protecting us.
Okay. Yeah, so Mayor, sorry to elaborate a little bit more. My brain was back on my San Jose getting an answer ready for the Councilmember Davis. So there's 2 parts of what we're doing with procurement. One is just getting throughput and capacity, so hiring people to get the throughput and focusing on making sure they don't get recruited or poached away from other cities and counties, which has actually been our largest challenge. The second is we're looking at a prioritization scheme to make sure we prioritize things the right way. The third is we have just finished the first draft of an RFP to engage consultants to help us come in and take a more strategic view at our policies and our organization and our technology. And so that 3-pronged together approach will get us there. We've actually looked at the threshold, and the being data-driven is changing the threshold had less impact than we thought. I think the good thing is we're looking at these things and finding out what delivers the biggest impact. So throughput, prioritization, and then strategic look at people, process, technology to make improvements.
It's disappointing. I was hoping that threshold might fix a lot of things. It sounds like it won't.
What the work we've done so far is it's actually not the root cause.
Yeah, I get it. I think I get it. I know it's complex. So I think you have a council that's eager to help in any way we can, and so just please nudge us accordingly. And then, can I ask about the 22 cycles, the review cycles?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Rob Lloyd to come on down and talk about that one. That's his favorite thing to talk about.
And while Rob is coming down, Councilmember Davis, I think one thing to answer your question is we are nearing the completion of an RFP for consulting services to help with process improvement. So, Michelle, being a very talented person, we have been unable to clone her. So as a result, we've actually down to the selection phase. So we'll get a lot more boots on the ground to help with process improvements, which will also address some of those issues you brought up.
Thank you. Are we going to put cloning on the roadmap?
It's a big rock.
It's not funded.
It's not small wonder.
Privacy and ethical stuff.
Work for sheep, that's all.
I'm sorry, can you restate that question? Michelle and I were strategizing on
Oh,
Councilmember Davis's.
I understand. Yeah, just the 22 review cycles on
Cybersecurity policy.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So we did set.
How do we
actually
stop?
And actually, technically, it was the 23rd version that passed. But the agreement we had with the assistant city manager and OER is that we would actually have some policy guidance as a matter of course and structure, so that they would be part of the process to coach us through, rather than the iteration through all the departments. And so what we did is we cut it off and said, your input is due at this point. We're going to go through the unions at this point, and we will be done at this point, and that's what actually helped us get done by the deadline. So I think it's just a matter of process, and we'll reuse that in the next one with the mobile devices policy.
And I think the core of the spin on this one was that from an administration standpoint, we like our policies to be clear, crisp, simple. Cybersecurity is very complicated and nuanced, and if you try to simplify it, you actually extract things that are core that may not look like their core. And so
Yeah.
we kept kind of cleaning things up and removing the wrong stuff and kind of going around the mulberry bush when we've gotten to the end of that mulberry bush at this point.
It's a good clarification, because there were some things where we had to push back and said we cannot remove or simplify those items. And then we looked at other people's, and there's like 23 control families on the states or Santa Clara counties, and it's 109 pages, and said we think we've done it pretty simply at less than 20. So there is some of that we have to learn our way through.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Robin. Good luck on your candidacy.
Oh, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Vote early, vote often.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to also comment on Councilmember Davis's comments about My San Jose. As someone who has worked in the back end side, where we had a beautiful customer interface, but on the back end it was a hamster running on a wheel, that I understand the complexities of trying to manage customer expectations. So, and it's going to be a long and difficult process when we finally get that to work properly. So I want to suggest maybe even taking a step back in terms of how we can lower customer expectations at this point in terms of what they can expect. We can't go back to saying it's a beta, but if there's another strategy where we can kind of, again, lower customer expectations so that they have a better customer experience until we work out all the kinks, which is going to take a long time. So that's, I see you want to.
No, just agreed. And one example of where we've done that is we're doing a better job, and Michelle has led this, on communicating out what response times look like and what exceptions to response times. Because before, potholes are a good example. Potholes can either be pretty quick and easy to fix, or potholes can be part of a longer term repair and replace thing that is going to happen 6 months from now. And prior, people would just either, that would be it, right? And either you go and the pothole is fixed and you got it, or you wait 6 months and you get a response. Now we have a response that talks about typical, and when things are atypical, I believe we also then follow up. So people understand what box they're in. They may not necessarily be happy about the box, but at least they understand the size of the box, and it helps manage expectations. So I think there's more that we can do around that. I think we are in a pivot point, because we were charging pretty hard toward the 2.0, and again, the pullback to focus on the website and other pieces has put some strain on that team going back and forth. But I think your advice to be realistic about the expectations is a valuable one.
And speaking of boxes, Vice Mayor, you'll see on the middle of the top user-friendly government row a digital services strategy. Mm-hmm. If you remember the last time Michelle was here and she presented the strategy, we're kind of following London's approach to a certain extent, which is we're jumping in and doing something and learning from it, and then taking a step back and working on the strategy. So, unintended consequences of jumping right in and introducing 5 services online, and so we'll be taking that feedback into consideration as we actually start working on a broader, digital services strategy.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing too is I still haven't made the transition from red to, what was it, magenta? What am I looking at here? Fuchsia. I don't know. Fuchsia. Yeah. I just don't have that same sense of urgency when I see a pretty color like that. No need to comment.
Thank you for the feedback.
And the only other thing too is I want to thank the team for incorporating the look ahead. And I think the mayor brought up a really great point in terms of we can even expand on this even more in terms of what you need from council, or what council actions need to take place in order to move this forward. So I think if we can incorporate that in these summaries, I think it will have a more refined strategy, and at least a direction that we can lead towards.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Could I just jump in real quickly? If we go to the last slide for a moment, I just want to make a pitch for sort of what I and the Modi team have been kind of push on the small wonders, the small wonder challenges. I guess what we're really trying to do is see how we can first engage in ways with innovation that have direct impacts on residents, because we know an awful lot of the work that we have to do around innovation is often internal. We know it's inward facing because we've got a lot of internal systems that have huge technology deficits, and we're working hard on all that. But the idea is, seeing are there some of the lower hanging fruit we can look at that will have direct impacts to residents relatively soon, and then how do we actually generate public engagement through these, and really being able to also to structure and balance our response to the enormous flood of requests we have from companies and innovators who just want us to try whatever their latest wear is. And the idea is if we can start to narrow these down to just a few areas where we think technology data can have some kind of very specific impact, we can at least narrow our focus and take out a lot of noise. And so that's sort of, I think, what animates all this, and I just wanted to provide that context if I could. Thanks.
So Mayor, I would say that the good news is that 3 weeks ago we had all the directors, every department director, and Dave Sykes was in attendance at what we call our Innovation Collaboration Meeting, previously known as the Innovation Cabinet. And we walked through this list, and I wasn't sure what the reaction was going to be. The reaction was actually very positive. I mean, DOT would say, hey, we're working on a lot of these things, great. From Climate Smart, there was a feedback that we'd love to work on hard to recycle plastics. It's probably a big rock in the long term, but interest in seeing what we might be able to do there in the short term. We're actually just signed an MOU to do crowdsourced crime and safety events as we speak that will involve community engagement. You're going to see today under smart infrastructure, IoT devices that are making our park safer. And so there was a good mix of future thinking, but also things that departments are working on. So it was embraced, and so we appreciate the pitch, but there was some enthusiasm about it already.
So I just had a question about the app, not necessarily a technical question, but can we as council offices get the data of the progress we've made as a city, just in terms of, we've really cleaned up South San Jose, or we've really cleaned up East Side, just so we can kind of brag about it with our constituents, and when they say, why hasn't my particular pothole been filled, we can at least point to and say, well, we've done a lot of good work on the West Side, and this is where our resources are right now. So it's not that we're not working, it's just that you're in the queue.
Thank you, Councilmember Diab. We do have a public dashboard, which we can share the link of. It's actually bit.ly/MSJ dashboard, or you can get to it from the San Jose, My San Jose customer portal that shows all of the requests, and there's a slider where you can adjust the date and you can look at it by district. Okay. So go play with that. Okay. In addition, our team is planning to roll out some more openness about our progress, including like a quarterly report on, thanks to our community for, reporting X hundred potholes. We, thanks to your help, this is everything that we accomplished together as a community.
Oh, excellent.
So thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you. So I have a question about cybersecurity. I don't know if I'll wait for him to come down. As I ask my question, basically we're dealing with cybersecurity, and that's great, and I'm glad that we're doing it. I just want to question, are we overdoing it? And here's my specific kind of gripe. When we all sign on on board as employees, a lot of us probably ask for the ability to check email on our phones or at home, and not just through the internet at work. So we're given an app, and I won't plug the app, but we're given an app and saying, this is our work email app. You can sign on here and get all our work email. And the app is, it's a pretty nice interface. And so I used it for my email, my personal email, and also my work email, and it just flows into one screen. You can just see everything with one check. About, I think, a few weeks ago, there was some sort of scan that said, non-government email detected, delete, delete, delete. And so all of my personal accounts were kind of blocked from the app. And so now the app only allows the San Jose work email, which I guess makes it more secure somehow. I'm not sure how, because I'm just reading email. I'm not intermingling data or doing whatever. But is that necessary? And if so, why?
So actually, you'll see two things that the major companies have done, and there was an update to the Outlook application. Is that the one you're talking to?
Oh, you plugged them. All right.
Yeah. So that's actually something from Microsoft itself, and it did have some security goals at the center of it. But there also was a lot of community feedback that it did some undesirable things. And you also saw something from Apple where they're trying to lock things down too this week, where parental controls and apps that do that locked it down too much. So there is an honest debate about things that are convenient and things that are secure. And there are going to be those things that flip a little too far one way or the other, and we're going to have to keep on adjusting. Our job, and the Cybersecurity Office's job, is to try to make those trade-offs in a smart way, that some of them are more risky than others, some of them are less. Let's not just lock everything down, unplug everything, turn off the lights, because then the organization stops. And convenience does matter, user experience does matter, but there are some things that we can do that provide a lot of control and security without creating a lot of displeasure or turmoil or bad experience for users. So, but there will be, honestly, a balance that we have to find for the organization.
Okay. But are you saying that was a Microsoft-initiated thing, or was that we requested? Or?
Yeah, the Outlook app one was an update from Outlook,
Okay.
and though there has been a recent explosion in spear phishing attacks. So they also are reacting to the environment. So at this point, I think over 80% of our mail is getting blocked right now as spam. But we have had, even in the organization, people reporting those ransomware attacks and hopping email accounts as well. So people are just trying to be careful.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd just like to report, I just jumped on the dashboard. It's really cool.
Yeah, actually, and as an action item, Chair Diep, in terms of the go play with that, I couldn't catch that link, so we have an action item to send that link out to the council with a well-crafted email, so you actually can click on it.
Well, let's not just keep it just away to the council. What about all our viewers at home? What is that link?
Yeah, what is the link?
Mayor?
Actually, if you go on if you go on My San Jose through the city website portal, you'll get there.
All right, viewers at home, it's on you now. All right, thank you. Moving on, next item.
Great. So thank you. While we're transitioning here to the next presentation, I'll ask all our presenters to come down. So we're going to ask our committee to participate in a Smart City Committee pictogram puzzle, which is directly related to our next topic, the Internet of Things, and how the city is approaching the Internet Things. So the first committee member to correctly identify the pictogram puzzle gets to display my 32-year-old Star Trek The Next Generation lunch pail, a prized commodity, in their office for 6 months. Or not. Or not, depending on who wins and who actually is excited about this or not. So here we go. The first person to chime in.
T? I fear T.
Sandra O. IoT.
And Councilmember Diep, the chair, wins the 6-month lease on the Star Trek The Next Generation lunch pail. So you might ask, why was it backwards? Well, it's backwards because that's actually how IoT market has largely progressed. It's been vendor-driven. It's been driven backwards from the way it should be driven, which is people-driven. So when we think about IoT, we need to think about being people-centered and thinking about the needs of our people in the community before we determine which technology might or might not benefit the people of San Jose. So speaking of people, before we get started and go through the agenda, I'd like to introduce in the front box, I'm joined by Keshav Gupta, the city's IoT lead, and John Vildemuth, who's the Public Works Senior Electrician. In the back box is Public Works Municipal Energy Manager Andrea Case. Ian Aaron, the CEO of Smart Lighting Control and IoT company Ubiquia, and last but not least, the city's CIO, Rob Lloyd. And Ian, if you can introduce your cohort here, I'd appreciate it.
And our senior field engineer, Aaron Cox. Thank you very much.
Great. So today's agenda on IoT, we're going to do a quick recap of our journey, where we've been and where we're going on IoT, and our strategy. We're going to provide some perspectives on IoT platforms. We're going to talk briefly about our IoT Reference Architecture that we have been working on with Aries. And we're going to talk about our public-private partnerships that we're actually actively engaging on right now. We're going to do a project spotlight on smart controllers and community Wi-Fi in parks. This is where you're going to get your first ever working live demo of technology cooperates. And then last but not least, Ian's going to give us some of his perspective on the smart controller-based IoT solution market. So in front of you is a picture of Seven Trees Park, Community Center, and Library. It's a place where our community gathers. Seven Trees was designed around people, including open space to enjoy the greenery of the park. It doesn't look green right now, but it is. We have tennis and basketball courts and a basketball field to enjoy sports during the day and night. As a community center, we have activities and programming, including soul line dancing. I don't know what that is, but that's what they do there. We have a coding ninja summer camp at Seven Trees, and we have free access to the internet. Across the street, there's a parking lot where homeless families can sleep during the night with the support of Lifeways, and there's many more people-centered services at this park. So today, as we discuss IoT, a rather dense topic, I learned from the last committee meeting not to say dry, so as a rather dense topic, keep Seven Trees Park in mind and keep people-centered in mind. Think about how we might make better use of irrigation systems to keep the park green. Think how we might use less energy for the evening sporting events or the HVA system in the library. Think about how we might expand the knowledge and opportunity of the internet to the homeless people in the parking lot across the street. And really think about how anything we build at Seven Trees or enjoy at Seven Trees would happen without utility, without water or sewer electricity. Then think about internet connectivity, which is really the foundation of Internet of Things. And that's really becoming the fourth utility. Connectivity is really the electricity of the 21st century. So by the end of today's committee meeting, if we have done our job well, you'll begin to see how Seven Trees is becoming a more connected and people-centered park through smart cities and IoT solutions. As part of our IoT strategy, which was funded by Knight, we had the opportunity to benchmark other cities on their journey and their quest to become a smart city using IoT. What you see here in front of you is a full spectrum of approaches from vendor-led, where vendor drives solutions looking for problems or press releases, or city or people-driven, where cities choose to be more informed, engage the community, and make choices intentionally. Much like Barcelona, Spain, which is really the gold standard for being people-centered and data-driven, San Jose has chosen to land on the right side of this spectrum, an intentional approach. You'll get a glimpse in the discussion today about how we're executing against this intentional model, which is intended to be people-centered, open, and planned for scale. It's not to say that we won't experiment, and it's not to say we won't be opportunistic, but looking at the work we've done, we've been intentional about focusing on people, making sure we can scale, and making sure we are open. The landscape, not to mention any names in large states in the Midwest with a lot of sand, or places in Ohio that have lots of press, unfortunately what they're deploying cannot scale easily, and therefore there's a question of really our ultimate ROI. So our journey for enabling IoT started with our strategy. We completed the strategy phase in June of 2018, and we're currently in the execution phase. Following on that approved strategy, current work in progress includes creating a standards architecture or playbook for IoT deployments in the city with the support of a local technology partner, Eris. Internally, we're also evolving our privacy and security policy. We're also piloting a number of people-centered use cases enabled by public-private partnerships in San Jose, and we've also developed a backlog of use cases and partnerships that can further accelerate implementation and adoption of IoT in San Jose. These partnerships include work underway with AT&T and Verizon, and partnerships we're initiating with Siemens and Amazon Web Services. It should be noted that it was only in February of 2018 that the city manager canceled the innovative LED RFP and terminated contract negotiations with a technology vendor. A few months later, in June of 2018, we presented the status and potential path forward for options for LED retrofits and smart controllers. At that committee meeting, this committee recommended we explore opportunities with the telecoms to opportunistically retrofit our incandescent LED and explore geographic pilots of next generation smart city lighting controllers. You might remember Councilmember Camus waving his phone, asking us to explore internet-based smart lighting control platforms. At that time, we had not finished our partnerships with AT&T, Verizon Mobility, So we immediately began taking those recommendations from the June committee and working them into our telecom agreements. And less than 1 year later, 11 months later, today we'll be able to spotlight one of those projects, our partnership with Ubiquiti and AT&T, on replacing 600 incandescent lights with LEDs and next generation smart controllers in a number of our parks. All this work was progressed, intentionally formulated to help the city learn and make informed decisions about our policy, investment, and platform. We recognize we have more work to do in IoT policy. I should point out there is no policy precluding IoT devices being attached to our poles. However, in the spectrum of a factory approach like we now have with small cells versus a custom approach, we're still in that custom approach with IoT devices, and we recognize there's more work to be done. One of the complexities in this policy area is that every interaction with the private sector we've had with IoT and placing those devices on our poles immediately leads to discussions about data sharing and the value of data sharing and data monetization and that value chain. This is a very complex area. We will be cautious, and there remains a significant amount of work to be done in the IoT policy. We also have much more work to do on the investment and funding model. One idea is to build the funding for technology, specifically IoT, into capital projects as we think about digital infrastructure and connectivity being the next utility. Ultimately, our end game, we expect on the technology side to issue an RFP for an IoT platform or platforms that best meets the needs of the city and our citizens. It should be noted that all of this work on this page, other than his first year with the city as a Fuse Fellow, has been driven by Keshav with almost zero impact to the general fund as a result of our agreements we've made with the private sector. So it's my pleasure to turn the presentation over now to the city's IoT lead, Keshav Gupta.
Thank you, Dolan. Good afternoon, committee chair, honorable mayor, committee members, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Keshav Gupta, and I'm part of the Civic Innovation team. I wanted to start the discussion on IoT today by extending my appreciation to our generous funders, Knight Foundation, that gave us the seed grant to develop the first ever citywide Internet of Things strategy. We work closely with our consulting partners, PricewaterhouseCoopers, along with the city staff and the leadership team. We presented this IoT strategy to the committee about a year back, and since then, we have gone through a very structured approach and developed an execution plan for operationalizing this strategy. Today, we'll spend time touching upon some of the key tenets of this strategy and also discuss the use cases that we are enabling in our city ecosystem. As you heard from Dolan, we decided to take a very intentional approach for IoT solutions planning and deployment. We have kept the community benefits at the heart of this strategy. Through workshops with the senior city leadership team and working with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation, we built a set of 8 guiding principles for shepherding our IoT strategy. The most important principle that guides our approach is public safety, not just physical safety, but also cybersecurity and digital privacy of our community. And you heard about some of those things a little bit earlier. We want to build solutions that improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our current services while laying down the foundation for some new services. And finally, we want to apply an innovation lens to these solutions. Innovation lens, not for the sake of innovation, but innovation that delivers real community benefits, enabled through experimentation with our partner ecosystem, both big and small. We will be mindful of these guiding principles as we plan and deploy more IoT solutions in our community. We have taken a 3-pronged approach for building our IoT strategy. As you will see, these building blocks for the IoT strategy have been developed not using a sequential approach, but rather an iterative one. At the foundational level, without which we cannot deliver on the IoT promise, is an effort to develop a set of horizontal capabilities around cybersecurity, privacy, smart city platforms, and data strategy. These are common building blocks and capabilities, and we have recommended that these capabilities are developed and deployed centrally so we can have all the city departments in their IoT journey. The next building block is around engaging with different stakeholder groups, not just within the city, but also other public agencies like PDA and Valley Water. We want to engage with our private sector partners to co-innovate, and you will see some examples of that co-innovation today. We also want to work with our community that can provide valuable inputs for many of these use cases. The last building block of our approach is to look at these solutions through a pilot first and then scale approach. And we have chosen 4 cross-departmental domains for that: public safety, mobility, facilities management, and environment. And you'll be hearing about some of these priority use cases today. Finally, all of this has to tie back to our guiding principles and community benefits we talked about. One of the key horizontal capabilities that we have talked about is to build IoT platforms and drive platform thinking in the city. So what does this platform thinking involves? It's all about developing reusable solution components and create standards for IoT technology deployment. So every time an IoT use case is enabled in the city, we don't have to start from scratch. Platforms will allow us to have a common framework and a set of guidelines for building and deploying IoT solutions. Through these solutions, we would be able to share data using the open data community architecture solutions that have been built by corporate IT. As Dolan alluded before, some of the work that has been identified going forward is developing a city policy for infrastructure usage through tiered fee-based model and exploring alternate funding models like data monetization. And finally, none of this would be possible without investing in people. Not only people who can help us conceive and implement these solutions, but also people who are going to provide support for sustaining operations and IT. We did some preliminary research for smart city IoT platform vendors, including looking at Gartner and Forrester reports. To be perfectly candid, the smart city IoT platform ecosystem is still evolving, and there is a fairly large number of players in the market. On last count, there were about 750 vendors that claim to have some kind of an IoT solution platform, and that number continues to grow. As we know, not all platforms are created equal, and the vendors have all taken a seemingly distinct approach to develop their platforms based on their DNA and opportunity for market expansion. The need for having platform is clear for the city, but the bottom line is that we have to experiment and learn from these experiments so we can understand our requirements better and manage our risks prudently before committing ourselves to specific platform solutions. I will now move over to some foundational work that we are doing with a local San Jose-based company, Aris. Aris is in the business of building connectivity and IoT solutions for private sector corporate clients, and they have a huge leg up in this space. On a pro bono basis, Aris is providing advisory services to help us build our IoT reference architecture. So what is IoT reference architecture? It is nothing but a set of standards, guidelines, and protocols that can be used as a blueprint by corporate IT and all other city department IT teams as they consider planning and implementing IoT solutions. We envision this work with Aris to be developed in the form of a playbook that will be a living, breathing document and will be managed by corporate IT. So if I'm a city department team that is interested in deploying an IoT solution, say a smart lighting controller, I can use this playbook to develop my solutions and adhere to the city standards that have been set forward for these requirements. I can then actively participate with my vendor partners in choosing technology components that meet or exceed these standards. So far, CMO, corporate IT, Public Works, DOT, and Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation have participated in these facilitated workshops with Aris to learn and contribute to creating this playbook. As Dolan alluded, information and connectivity is being hailed as the fourth utility. Given that, we decided to focus on connectivity layer as the first chapter of the IoT Reference Architecture playbook. We looked at representative cross-section of use cases, and Aris mapped them against a set of IoT connectivity options. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but based on the smart city use cases where we see some technology convergence for the city, we anticipate 3 dominant options: Wi-Fi, public LoRa, which is a shorthand for long range, cellular LPWA, shorthand for low power wide area. 5G is of course being mentioned as a game changer, and we are fortunate that San Jose is leading the nation in 5G deployments. We should be able to leverage that extensively as we go through our IoT planning and deployments. To net it out, we're expecting that we'll have a hybrid connectivity model and use case that will drive the choice of specific solution options. Once again, I wanted to share my appreciation for Aris for collaborating with us. This is especially valuable for us given the limited IT architecture talent pool that we have in the organization that can conduct informed decisions and discussions on enterprise architecture, application architecture, or solution architecture. As you heard from our CIO in the last committee meeting, this should be a priority investment area for us, especially as we look at scaling some of these IT solution deployments citywide.
And if I could, just a particular shout out to Z Hussein and Harry Plant with Aris. They've given their time generously and take a chart like this. Sometimes with consultants, this is all you get. We spent hours with them going down deeper in, and no matter how many times we clicked and double-clicked and went down, they knew their stuff, they knew the companies, they knew the technology, they knew where it worked, where it didn't, and were able to give us extremely valuable information without having a dog in the hunt themselves. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to both Z and Harry on that. It was extraordinary skills-based volunteering that they've been doing for us.
Thank you, Kip. Last June, City Council approved our telco private-public partnerships. As a part of these negotiations, Verizon and AT&T are providing in-kind contributions in the form of smart city pilot projects. Given our IoT strategy and use case domain areas that I mentioned earlier, we are currently focusing on mobility and intelligent transportation solutions with Verizon. The Verizon solutions will provide a number of community benefits like moving the needle on our Vision Zero goals and better addressing traffic and congestion management challenges. With AT&T, we are piloting solutions in public safety and facilities management. And these solutions will not only give us an access to better asset management, but also extending our public Wi-Fi capability in the parks. The goal for these pilots is to deploy these IoT solutions in the city and use data to learn and make informed decisions as we look at scaling these pilots into long-term viable solutions for the city. I also wanted to extend my appreciation for both Verizon and AT&T for providing these solutions to and working with us in the city. Thank you. The first Verizon Smart City solution is the Intersection Safety Analytics Service. It is a hosted web-based portal solution that provides information about traffic volume, speed, direction, vehicle metrics for current and historical periods. It can measure traffic-related conflicts amongst motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists by collecting, processing, and analyzing and correlating traffic data. In support of Vision Zero goals, the resulting analytics can be used to derive insights into how to change potentially dangerous road behavior through infrastructure updates and possible intersection modifications. All of this can be viewed using dashboards and data visualizations. DOT will be working on these Verizon solutions, and they have chosen 3 traffic intersections in the city for the pilot. The second solution is the Verizon Traffic Data Services solution. It's a data service that provides traffic and population movement information with high spatial and time resolution solely for the use of the city to better plan and manage transportation systems and congestion in the city. The end goal is to ingest this data from Verizon through an API, shorthand for application programming interface, and integrate with our e-tracker solution. Once again, DOT will be leading this pilot, and we'll be covering a significant portion of our road mile segments spread across the city roadways. The third and final solution from Verizon is the Verizon Fleet Telematics solution. Over the last several years, Public Works has piloted the Verizon Connect service for fleet telematics in the city. This solution enables the city staff to remotely monitor the vehicle performance, location, and operations. The solution has a number of benefits: improved safety of vehicles and drivers, better operations and cost savings, and also better information on vehicle utilization through dashboards, interactive maps, and data visualization. Public Works, working very closely with Verizon, is further expanding the solution footprint to an additional 1,100 vehicles, bringing the total vehicle count with Verizon Connect to over 1,600 in the city. Now moving over to the AT&T Smart City solution set, let us first talk about a digital infrastructure solution. The DI node, as it is called, is basically an IoT pod that houses a number of sensors, including audio, video, and environmental sensors. This solution has been deployed in a number of cities, including San Diego. It has the potential to support a wide number of use cases where having situational awareness is required, and near-time information is very useful, like mobility use cases, economic development use cases, and public safety use cases. The city staff has gone through multiple iterations of the use cases, have converged on public safety in the parks with 3 potential locations: Discovery Meadows, Seven Trees, and Starboard Park. This is going to be a limited pilot with 15 nodes only, but given this is an advanced IoT solution, we want to make it very clear that this will be deployed in the parks only after our privacy policy for this use case has been fully developed and vetted. With this, let me turn over the mic to John Wildermuth from Public Works, who will talk about the final set of our IT solutions that include LED retrofits in the parks, smart controllers, and community Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Keshav. Good afternoon, Committee Chair Deep, Honorable Mayor, committee members, and members of the public. My name is John Wildermuth. I've been in the electrical industry for over 20 years, and 13 of those years I've been a city employee with the Department of Public Works in the Facility Management Division. Over the years, I've worked on numerous projects in a variety of roles, installing lighting control products. I'm excited today to talk to you about this proof of concept pilot project, where the city is partnering with AT&T and Ubiquia, and the possibilities we have by deploying these nodes across a sampling of our park's ecosystems. So let's talk about this project in particular. AT&T Smart City Solution, LEDs, controllers, and community Wi-Fi. AT&T will install and deploy 550 LED fixtures to replace existing low-pressure sodium fixtures, along with controllers in 11 parks. The city will self-install 120 smart controllers in 3 parks. Here's the best news. We've already completed those 3 projects. We've already completed the LED retrofit at 7 Trees. We've installed the smart controllers, and the Wi-Fi is a proof of concept pilot, which is stood up, and even as early as today, we went out and we're testing Wi-Fi speeds, and we're seeing the same speeds within the community center as we're seeing on the outside of the community center as you walk around the tennis courts and around the different aspects of that community center. Frank Bramhall Park, the LEDs were already installed. We've installed the controllers, and the intent is to install Wi-Fi there as well. Lincoln Glen Park, the LEDs were installed this week, and the controllers were installed as well, and again, the intent is to install the Wi-Fi there. The parks are spread across council districts, and the intent is for all to have community Wi-Fi. AT&T will provide installation, deployment, and networking commissioning services, and AT&T will provide connectivity and support for 24 months on these projects. So let's talk about site deployment and rollout and how we chose these sites. We wanted to have equal distribution across all council districts. On the slide, you'll see the sites that we have chosen. In order for us to get the most bang for the buck, and in order to get these projects stood up quickly, we chose parks that are attached to community centers. So we have an existing backhaul that we can tap into. We can simply push that Wi-Fi out from those community centers out into the adjoining parks. And this allowed us to do more sites with the budget that we had and to have a quicker turnaround. Deployment in Districts 3, 5, and 7 will help us deploy Wi-Fi internet connectivity to citizens who might not otherwise have internet access, and it allows us to see if this is a needed benefit for those members of the community. As Dolan talked about earlier, at 7 Trees in District 7, it is deployed in a parking lot where the city is collaborating with Life Moves. They help to transition homeless families to semi-permanent housing. This Wi-Fi can help those members of the community connect with family, unwind at the end of a busy day, research housing options, or even job opportunities. Next, let's talk about some of the potential benefits for smart controllers in the San Jose Parks ecosystems. From day one, we see significant energy savings by converting from low-pressure sodiums to LEDs. Unlike streetlights, which pay a discounted flat rate, PRNS pays peak demand meter rates. So depending on the time of day and the usage, you pay a different rate. For the 40 tennis and basketball court fixtures converted to LEDs, the city will see over a 50% energy savings by converting to LEDs. You couple this with the controls, and the energy saving increases to over 75%. That's huge. And here's how we do it. We install a simple button like this. So if you look at 7 Trees, they have 2 sets of tennis courts, and they have a basketball court. If I go out there to play in the tennis court, there's no need for me to turn on the lights in the other tennis courts or the basketball courts. I simply turn it on by pushing the button. The lights come on, they stay on for an hour. After that hour, they return to their resting state. If I want to continue to play, I push the button again. I'll pass this around so you guys can put your hands on it. I think the biggest takeaway from that is we only use the energy when it's needed. Another benefit of the smart controllers is improved asset management and ongoing opportunities using the UB platform. The UBview platform is a platform designed by Ubiquia that allows the city to see in real time the status of its lighting inventory. It allows whomever we grant access to log onto the platform from a variety of devices, and additionally, we can layer the amount of control the user has once in the platform. Remotely view the fixture's health via the UB platform. This gives the user the ability to diagnose many issues, determine the level of response needed, saving valuable staff time. Some of the most common complaints Public Works Facilities Management receives are lights are not coming on, tennis court lights are staying on past 10 p.m., or the lights are day burning. We can go back and based upon the devices in these nodes, we can actually see, did the light come on? Did it stay on past 10 p.m.? Is the light day burning? Really, the possibilities are endless. We can program these fixtures for special events. For example, National Night Out, if the community wants to leave the lights on longer. For a movie night, if we want to dim the lights in a park. And when we activate our OWL for the warming and cooling activation centers, we can use these to control the lights to keep them on longer, or simply operate certain portions that we're choosing to activate or use with that activation. We can receive real-time notifications of non-working fixtures, nodes, and knockdown poles. We can determine how we want to receive those notifications depending on the type of issues we are experiencing. For example, if a fixture is not working, we can receive an email and we can put it into our work order queue. Right now, we have to wait upon citizens to turn this in, or park staff who happens to see it when it's out. Sometimes those sit for several months and then they get into our queue and then we're able to get out to them. So it could be 6, 9 months before we actually get out there. In this, we get real-time notifications. One of the other things we can use this platform for and the nodes is a credible threat of stolen wire. So we can use notifications via email to text to expedite our responses. And I'll go into that a little bit more. So the opportunity to better address and react to copper theft. By using the UB platform and our historical experience with wire theft, we can use the data provided by the nodes to let us know with a high degree of certainty when a wire theft is taking place and dispatch city staff or the San Jose Police Department to catch the wire thieves in the act. So let me tell you how we would do that. If one light goes out, it's not a big deal. But if we have a series of 3 lights in a row that go out at once, that's a pretty certain thing that somebody has cut the wire. If all the power goes out to a side at once, that's something we want to respond to and investigate as facility management to see what's going on. Based on our experience with wire theft in San Jose that took place in parks, most took place over a series of days or weeks. By catching the thieves early, we can reduce the time and cost it takes to get the site back up and running. We can turn what would have been a $30,000 to $100,000 repair to less than $5,000. I'll give you an example of this as early as this morning. We had somebody cut the wire to a pole out at 7 Trees so they could power their cell phone. We received a notification immediately. We dispatched an electrician who went out, talked with the individual, explained to them this was not appropriate, made the fix, made the repair. The light was back on. Tonight that light will be on and working.
What does that mean, they explained it was not appropriate?
The electrician just had a conversation that said, I can't have you plugging into this, it's not safe for you. And in this situation, the individual complied and was willing to disconnect what they had connected to the light. One of the other benefits that we receive is improved community engagement through Wi-Fi. Hanging out in parks is different than it used to be. People are playing Pokemon Go, they're shooting videos, they're posting them on Instagram, they're laughing over those funny videos, streaming music while walking and working out. They can use this Wi-Fi to connect to participate in all of those. The other benefit the city receives from this is that citizens could be greeted with a splash page of upcoming events pertaining to an individual site or pertaining to that council district. So you're at 7 Trees, there happens to be the Zumba dance, whatever it is, you want to talk about that, you can put that on there, that comes up first, and then you're able to log on to your Wi-Fi.
Soul line dancing.
Soul line dancing, there you go. Additionally, this supports the city's digital inclusion goals as far as connectivity. Also, one of the other benefits that these smart controllers provide is they address public safety. So by allowing officers to safely view what's going on at a site from a distance, the officer can then make the appropriate action determination. And finally, one of the things that I'm really excited about, one of the opportunities that these nodes present is a better understanding of parks, facility, and usage. Wouldn't it be great to know which park is the most popular in the city of San Jose, or which is most popular in your council district? And wouldn't it be nice to know what makes that park popular? So these nodes can be activated to collect data to tell us how much use a park gets, what time of day is most popular, and what features in the park are being used the most. This piece would be activated in conjunction with the city's data privacy policy. And Ian, the CEO of Ubiquia, will go into more detail on this. With that, I'd like to introduce Ian.
First, I'd like to thank Kip, Dolan, and Keshev and the council, mayor, vice mayor, and council members for giving me the opportunity to speak. I will have to say that John's presentation is a tough act to follow, and he did a great job in explaining not only the core functionality of what we do, but some of the advanced services that we've been able to deliver here in a short period of time. I really just wanted to start, there we go. I really just wanted to start in a general overview of why cities are deploying controllers today. And we like to say we're drafting behind the LED conversion. When you put in an LED light that can dim and have other functions, you might as well put a controller in versus a photocell. In fact, if you have to go up on a pole in another 2 years, there's a cost justification in itself to do it now. But by adding that controller and dimming and controlling it with schedules, you can get another 10 to 15% of energy efficiency on top of the LED. Streetlight infrastructure, as John said, you get immediate notification especially when we're partnered with AT&T and we're leveraging the LTE network, we're getting literally immediate notification that there is a day burner or that a light has a driver issue. And all of those things, based on the frequency of these problems, can go directly into dispatching and work orders with the proper detail of equipment along with that work order. We see this all the time. I just did a little count on my San Jose. There were 171 streetlight outage requests just in the past week. And if we can reduce those, and some of them were there for a period of time, if we can leverage real-time notification that there's an issue and dispatch and resolve those, we even with our data back end, we can communicate back to my San Jose to let them know that these things have been resolved. So a lot of things that we can do together here. And then, as I mentioned as we were talking, I saw the mayor nodding, we eliminate additional installation costs. We call this a one-touch install. Today, the streetlights have a warranty of 10 years, typically minimum. We have a product that has not only a lot of value today, but a long roadmap of capabilities. So that's typically why cities are deploying controllers. But we actually take this another step. So obviously, advanced light control is key. I should just let you know that I heard Dolan talk about vendor-driven, solutions. Our major partners and shareholders is NextEra, one of the largest utilities in the country. And a lot of the technology that came out of this came from actually working closely with them to fulfill requirements. This product isn't just for light control, it's actually a certified electric meter. So think of the same exact certification you have as your home. We meter not just the light, but also at the street. So if you have a city with 60,000 meters, you have 60,000 meters on the grid that are giving you real-time data on the quality of the power. This was a perfect example, as John mentioned. Somebody tapped into the power to charge a phone. We knew that, when I say immediately, within seconds. Same types of things. You have issues around stray voltage, where people could potentially get shocked on a metal pole. We let you know these issues in real time. So it's not just efficiencies, but it's also around safety. This has a tilt and vibration sensor in it. It's actually a high accuracy accelerometer. So when there's a crash, when there's a tilt in a pole, when you have Hurricane Irma and 25,000 poles down, we know exactly where those are. There's built-in GPS on this, high accuracy, so you also get GIS data that ties into your infrastructure that tells you exactly where the problems are. In fact, we have these all over the globe, from Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, across the US, Las Vegas, New York, DC. But in Mexico, when they had the earthquake, we actually saw the pre-quakes activity and then saw the aftershocks. And because it was in an area on the poles, we could see the fluctuation. And this is just standard in the product that we're talking about that's been deployed in 7 trees. Inventory management, our application isn't just about lights. On a pole, you may have a camera. You may have 2 lights. You may have other devices. So we're focused on how we help the cities track that inventory, obviously with high accuracy GIS data. And then, as John alluded to, this has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So we deliver services such as being able to see crowds and what the dwell time is. Perfect example is in a park and how much usage they're getting. We have quite a few cities who use this for their farmers markets, so they can understand just how many people are coming, how long are they staying. So very, valuable data. This also, just like Amsterdam, that has what they call the beacon mile. They put a Bluetooth beacon on every light. Every single street light is now a beacon. So think about the integration opportunities with My San Jose as they go through a historic area where they could have a beacon message that automatically comes in. Every street light is a beacon. You can decide where you want to deploy it and when. We talked a little bit about the public Wi-Fi coverage. I actually just put that up, give that to them just so they can feel and touch this. The installation process of what we did in 7 trees is essentially a 2-minute installation. The boom goes up, there's a test, we plug it into a socket that's been around for 54 years, and we've now densified Wi-Fi. So there's numerous opportunities in the city for this, and we're just excited about being able to be part of these opportunities to extend connectivity in the community. We talked a little bit about location-based services. This is actually a picture of New York. That's by the Bull in the financial district. So we're actually showing them how much congestion there is on both sides of the Bull. We can show where people are actually coming from and the people movement. So there's quite a interest in cities around how do you manage around construction, how do you make best use of services. And our goal is not to create pilot purgatory, but actually to create a network infrastructure so that cities can do it wherever they want, just by using the UV cell. And then finally, because of our connectivity, we have a host of industrial sensors. This happens to be, that I'm showing you, this is a particulate 1.0, 2.5, and 10 particulate, ozone, and nitrous dioxide sensor. Anywhere where you have a street light and a UV cell, you can plug this in, and we aggregate the data. We like to say in the city, we create a network blanket and then a data vacuum so that the cities can more easily deploy sensors, whether it's moisture sensors in a park, wind speed and direction in a bridge, or something like an air quality sensor. And everything that we do on data, it's not about ownership. It's about aggregation and compatibility with cities' open data policies. So we're not data owners, we're helping cities aggregate. And with this, I think I'll turn it back to John for a live demo.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so as promised, we're going to do a live demo. So in the simplest form, you have the node, you touch the node. This is a node right here. It acts as a photocell. So nighttime comes, you cover it up, the light turns on. Morning time comes, light goes off.
That's just simulating a street light.
Yep.
Can we turn on the Facebook live stream now?
Okay. Here we go. See. Yep. Okay, so this is the UBView portal, and we'll start with this node right here. If you see, as we scroll in, we are in the council chambers here, and there is your node right there, sitting on top of the building in the council chambers. And we'll go, this node is labeled as SJ Demo. So from my iPad, I can turn the light off and on via the switch that's here, except for Love Live Demos. They are not all. So let's go back to the map, and we'll come back to that in a second. So we'll go to, we talked about two of the deployments that were out there. So here you have, this is Frank Bramhall Park, and you can see the nodes deployed throughout the park here. These are on each of the individual poles that are there. And we can pull up real-time information of these nodes, and we can see what's going on with that node. So for example, that was node 20. So right now, if we look at node 20 here, we can see the status of it. If we click on this, and we'll see that the line voltage is 121 volts. You see that there's a load voltage, so we know that it's off. If somebody were to hit that, you see the tilt angle, that would adjust. That would send us an alarm. We'll go back to the map. And one of the other parks we talked about was Lincoln Glen. So you can see Lincoln Glen Park right here. We can see the nodes that are deployed in the parking lot, throughout the park, and in the restroom building. And finally, if we go to, I'll show you Seven Trees. So here is Seven Trees Park. And as you can see, we have nodes deployed all the way out into the softball field, in the parking lots, around the tennis courts and the basketball courts. And we can see real-time data about each of these individual nodes. So you touch on the node. The ones with the Ps happen to be the Wi-Fi nodes. Those are what's using to push the Wi-Fi signal throughout the park. And we can see the status of these, and we can see them on the list here. So as you can see, it's daytime right now, so all these lights are off. But we can set, in the thresholds here, we can go and we can set a schedule for when we want the light to come on, if we want the light to dim at a certain time, if we want it to go off. So for example, like the tennis courts right now, they come on a half an hour before sunset. They are enabled. They stay at a 20%. Somebody pushes the button in that area, that light goes on to 100% after an hour. It drops down to 20%. At 10 p.m. though, that button is disabled. So you can push that button as many times as you want. The lights won't come on. And that is it for my demo. I'm going to turn it back over to Kip.
So in closing, we'll go back to where we began, which was with people. So two pieces to emphasize. One, everything that we're doing here in Seven Trees, everything that we're doing in San Jose is really about the idea of how can we deliver benefits for people. So you see it in real time already happening in Seven Trees, and oops, there we go back. Okay, great, no problem. And in the next few months and years, you'll see more and more of this. So we are in the process in our parks of having IoT-enabled irrigation systems that will not only be able to be remotely controlled, but will look up the weather themselves. We'll know the ball field schedule, and we'll make sure that the soccer fields are dry when the kids are on it, make sure it's wet when it needs to be wet, but not when it's going to rain, and understand those things automatically and be doing the irrigation automatically. We'll have lighting controller nodes that are not only more efficient and effective, but respond to people and their activities and make it safer for them to be in the park. We'll be able to use Wi-Fi to enable people to experience the park the way they expect to experience the park. We'll make it safer through the deployment of sensors for the homeless families who are in the parking lot, and be able to enable them with both Wi-Fi and ways of keeping them more secure. And the reality is that nobody in those parks may actually even notice or know or care that any of this is IoT or technology. It's not about the technology, it's about the people. The other way that it's about the people is that for us in the city, the single most limiting factor on how much of this we can do and how we scale is our ability to collaborate with those technology companies like the ones that you've heard from today. And so for that, I want to give a shout out to John. As I've worked with technology leaders around the globe, one of the things that I've realized that the best technology leaders are those that are smart and can do things with their hands. And John is a personification of both of those, and he's a personification of exactly the type of person that we need to retain and grow in this city as a technology leader as we begin to deploy these, not as Ian said, in pilot purgatory, but at scale in a way that matters to people. So we're going to need more and more people like John as part of the organization to do some of the things that we think of as very traditional city services in a non-traditional way. And so with that, we'll close and open it up to questions and feedback from the committee.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say this is amazing, and I'm blown away. You know, this is phenomenal work, and we're headed in such a great direction. And I just want to commend the team for all you're doing and what you're going to do in the future. So great job.
Yeah, really wonderful demonstration. Really appreciate all the work that's gotten us to this point. And I don't want to minimize the importance of this work because it's really important, but I wanted to go back up to the 30,000 foot level. As I understand it, is most of our progress so far has been in the two spaces where we've had the partnerships with the telecoms, and as a result of the agreements. And it's great to see this progress because I think this is exactly where we want to go. My concern is starting with the point that you started with in this presentation. I think it was you, Kip, may have been Dolan, where we want to make sure this is something that's aligned with the city and the city's objectives and our community's objectives, and not the vendor. And I don't feel yet as though we've prioritized what the use cases are that we really want in the city. And the concern I have is that I feel like whether it's privacy advocates will be coming forward saying, well, wait a minute, what if you're using the device for this or for that? And we will say, well, that's not our use case. We don't want to do that. But we haven't really identified our use cases in advance. And I can understand the need to be flexible and to be nimble as new technologies emerge. There's certainly value in that, and I would expect these priorities will change as we figure out what the best technologies or use cases might be. But if I could be wrong here, but I don't feel like we've all agreed, here are the use cases we really want to trumpet. And so I raised the concern about, for example, privacy advocates is one example. I think the larger concern I have is just that I don't feel you were yet at the place where the dozens of companies are routinely coming to us saying, we've got the latest and greatest IoT idea, have a real clear idea about what the RFP or competition basis will be for being able to get access to our poles. And so I just want to know, do we anticipate, or do you anticipate, you know, is there going to be a time when we kind of come out clearly and explicitly say, these are our priorities for use cases? If so, when do you think that happens?
I think the answer is yes, that's a fair challenge, and we need to come out with that. I would say now where we're heading toward, in addition to those big buckets that we talked about, you know, we know things like connectivity is core. We understand street lighting is going to be one of those things that's going to come out with Measure T. Irrigation is in the works, and then building and energy management are ones, and fleet management are ones that, and traffic are ones that we have all identified. But as you said, we haven't put it all together and said, this is it, this is what our bet is and why. So I think that's a good next challenge to the strategy, and I'm going to put the man who's put most of the work into this, making this real on the spot in terms of when we might come back with a more refined set of use cases to kind of debate and decide on at the council level.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a fair question. And the way we are looking at is a two-prong approach. On one hand, we are developing a reference architecture where I talked about putting together standards, protocols, guidelines for what technology solutions should be. Today, in all fairness, we don't even know what to ask for in an RFP if I were to go out and say I want to procure this kind of an IoT device, whether that falls into the standards that I want to have or not. Now, marrying those technology standards with the use cases is the next step that we're looking at. I shared a table where we looked at connectivity options and some preliminary use cases that we can think about. But your point is absolutely valid. We should be looking at the use cases on a more consistent basis, prioritize that along with the city, and that feed that into reference architecture as well as the things that we're going to be doing next. So yes, absolutely, that is the next step, and we'll take that as a challenge.
And when do you think we can get back to the committee with that kind of conversation?
I would like to give ourselves about a quarter for having departments on board and at least having leadership teams from different groups to come back and tell us what they think are the true priorities as well.
I think that'd be great. And, you know, look, as you can imagine, we're going to be pretty deferential to where you guys believe those priorities are because you're very steeped in the technology and we're just trying to catch up. But I think it would be really helpful to have clarity in a public way. And I'm thinking about just all the ways we could be spinning our wheels around concerns around cybersecurity and privacy for things that may not really be real concerns if we don't really have an intent to go into that use case that's going to implicate those concerns. You know what I mean? So, and I remember this came up, I think, and Councilmember Camus came up with some issue around license plate readers. And, you know, it just seems like there's a way where we can really get into challenges with the community when we don't need to fight those battles if we really don't want to go there, you know. So that's concern number one. And so I really appreciate your willingness to kind of bring that forward. I think that would be very helpful. It would also be helpful as those priorities emerge, then we kind of have a clear idea what the RFP or challenge process might be so that we can move beyond just the telecoms to say, hey, world, and we know there's a lot of innovative companies around here. And obviously, it's great that we've got a great partnership with one of them right now, among others. But those many can say, okay, either we've got something that addresses what the city prioritizes or we don't, and gives us an easy way to say no if it's not on our matrix, and it enables them to have a pathway to yes. So I appreciate your willingness to consider that, and thank you for all the progress, and it's just tremendous.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. So as we were going through the slides, I think it was slide 30, the common characteristics of the Smart City IoT platform. I was keying in on some things you didn't say that were in the bullets. Need to factor in integration costs that can be 50 to 60% of the total solution costs. Evolve the talent pool to sustain operations and IT. I think, Kip, you alluded to that. And then Dolan talking about connectivity being new infrastructure. And knowing that we as a country and even as a city have infrastructure maintenance challenges. And so I just want to kind of piggyback on what the mayor was talking about with use cases. And what I didn't hear today, and maybe we're just not there yet since we don't know what the use cases are, but what is our framework for developing a cost-benefit analysis of implementing these things. I mean, it's great to have the free trials and everything like that, but if we're going to save 10 to 15% over and above LEDs by installing these, I hope we're not just taking into account the cost of the device itself, but also all of the infrastructure that we need to connect with it and to monitor it, and all of the hardware to store the data and all of that. So I wanted to bring that up because I didn't hear that, and you had the one bullet but didn't talk about it, which is totally fine. I know there's a lot of information, but do we have a structure for, or do we have a plan for figuring out a structure for determining which of these whiz-bang things we're going to do based on cost benefit and taking all the costs into account?
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to do, take a step back, is understand there really is zero funding right now in the city for IoT, right? I mean, the departments are where the departments explore opportunistic ways to use devices to help deliver their services. There isn't any, here's the IoT fund to make this happen, right? So I think part of the challenge we have is that we have not made that intentional investment, and the intentional investment is largely one person here trying to work their way across departments and achieve some economies of scale. So having said that, then yes, absolutely.
But to be clear,
yeah.
We don't have a budget, but we have people working on it, so we have costs already, right, with these deployments.
The deployments,
unless it's all efficiency, what you just showed us was, unless it's all efficiency, like everybody who's working on it saves time in some other way because of this.
Yeah, so there does need to be, a business case needs to be created that would factor in, CapEx, OpEx, both costs and savings,
right,
and factor that into the overarching business case for the service as well as the common platform. So I think the answer is yes, absolutely, that needs to be done. And that was going back to that slide there of, yes, that is the actual, we're learning about what we need to include or not include.
Okay.
I would say 6 months ago, we didn't know what the cost for a Wi-Fi LTE-enabled lighting controller was. Right, so by doing this, we actually understood it's somewhere in $5 to $8, a month per controller. So we're learning as we go through that. So
and that's just the cost for the device, or
yeah, I'm sorry.
for everything
No,
else that goes along with it, for
right.
the data storage, et cetera.
Right. So so there is the costs. So let's take the Ubiquia as an example. There's the cost of the device. There's the cost to install the device unless we do it at the same time as the LED.
Right.
There's the cost of the fourth utility, the connectivity, which is, and my unit of measure was wrong, it's about $5 to $8 per year, right? Then there's the actual ongoing maintenance and operations, both cost and savings, that we need to contribute. I would say right now, and looking at what the city's done, is we've done a good job of calculating cost. We actually aren't that mature in calculating savings, right? So when, for example, as we look at some of the previous work done on the innovative LED RFP and the work we're working on now, we're continuing having to call out the fact that there's additional operation savings that we're not talking about. John just addressed taking hundreds of thousands of an electrical cost because of the copper theft and getting it down to a $5,000. So we recognize, as we said here, there is an overall framework that we need to put together that includes really the ROI, the cost benefit, and risk over time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mayor Liccardo?
Yeah, I want to thank Ian and his team for partnering with us. I want to thank the various partners who have been helping us all along here, Verizon, AT&T, and particularly Aris, who I know has been giving their time, as I understand it, which is wonderful and very generous. And I'm wondering if there's, I don't know how much time they have left to give, but if they could also help us with this use case prioritization. Is that an area where we can engage with them on?
We have worked with them, and they have called out the use case prioritization as one of the things that we have to look at, because that goes hand in hand with the way we are thinking about technology and the reference architecture. So with ERIS, we should be able to work closely as we think about the pros and cons of the use case, not just because of what it is, but also because how it plays with the technology and the architecture components.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. And Keshav and John, really appreciated the demonstration. It would be really helpful for me, at least, as you come back in the next quarter, is to see both the prioritization and then for the high priority items, we would have some timeline for implementation about how we're going to engage with all those companies that want to engage with us in those particular use cases for whatever it might be, RFP or whatever kind of process that we think is appropriate. I think that would be great just to see how we can broaden the impact of IoT. We know there's a lot out there, and it feels as though, at least from my hearing externally, is people are having a hard time figuring out how to engage best with us. And so it would just be helpful if we can sort of articulate that very publicly. Here are the lanes you need to swim in if you want to engage with us. I just occasionally get that feedback of folks who are saying, yeah, we have all these great ideas, but we don't know when or whether the city is going to really be ready. And I'm happy to say no if it's not on that list, and say, hey, try another city or come back to us in 6 months. But it would be really great just to see both the priorities and the timeline. So thank you very much.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, and I definitely understand your concern, Mayor, with trying to identify a use case. And as you could probably tell, I'm just so in love with the technology that I'm not necessarily focusing on the use case. But one of the things that I don't want us to do is to eliminate the possibilities. There are use cases that we haven't even conceived of that will add value to our city and to our residents. And I don't want to create a framework where we, create a wall or a barrier to have access to those things that we haven't even conceived of or thought of yet.
You're absolutely right, Vice Mayor. I will be honest, I'll tell you that I didn't think about copper theft and the use case around copper theft until John said, oh, I can do this with the controller. So yes, there are things that we know about, and there are things that we just anticipate or look at and see that it really works. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, if I could just, I agree wholeheartedly, and this has to be an iterative process as we're engaging with the technologists that are around us in the community. I agree, this is going to be something that changes by month, potentially, or by quarter or by year. I just know that we're not able to clearly say yes right now because we're not able to say no. And I know it's a problem from my external conversations and from our teams. And so I think we just have to clearly communicate to people what we're open for right now. And so I really appreciate the point. There's no question technology is going to change and open our eyes to other possibilities. But I think it's important for us to be able to be clear.
So I have a few questions about the slides. Are we currently current on the 11 parks? Do they all have community Wi-Fi, and are they at this present moment, or will that happen in the next few weeks?
We just signed our partnership with AT&T and Ubiqua, and it's the self-installs that we have done, because we are already getting into 7 trees to put the LEDs on. So this project will start, it's right now in the planning phase. Through the end of the year, we expect all of these spots to be fully converted and be open for business with community Wi-Fi.
Okay, end of the year.
Yes.
And just to clarify, there were the use cases of the city can control the lighting for National Night Out. We can extend the lighting if people are in the park later. But then there was also the button. So like somebody who wants to hang out at the park later can throw a ball around, can keep it up. Like, how would that work?
Right now, the envision with the button is more around basketball courts, tennis courts, things that have the light doesn't necessarily need to be on all the time, only use the energy when needed, and then Yeah, it could basically it would go for a said period of time and then shut off to allow us to achieve the greatest energy savings possible. As of right now, we're not deploying it across the parks to control the park lighting system.
Got it. There was mention earlier of beacon mode. We can push messages or kind of track which is the most popular park. Would that be anonymized, or like can we kind of trace back if someone were trying to like bury a body in 3 a.m. we could find who was that?
As was mentioned, a lot of this we're not going to be deploying that until we've got real clarity on the privacy policy, and we've got a real clear through line on the protecting individuals' privacy and making sure we understand how we're managing the data and who owns the data. But essentially, some of those crowd tracking things can be very useful in festivals for flow. They can also be useful in emergency management situations and understanding where people are fleeing or where things are going on. But we want to make sure that we've got the security and the privacy on our side in place, and we're comfortable with the security and privacy controls that are in place on the vendor side before we get deeper into some of those use cases.
Good. I'm not sure if this particular node would work for this, but maybe could we potentially use this or something similar in your product line to detect for like leaky faucets in the public park restrooms or something like that?
Oh, thank you. So as I said, we have a suite of sensors that automatically connect to that with a centralized data aggregation around it. So we make it easy if you wanted to do a water leak detection, if you'd like to do soil moisture for a park, if you'd like to do air quality. And we work with several of the leading industrial sensor manufacturers to make sure that that product, our UV cell, actually has a secure communication and aggregation of the data.
Okay.
I also just wanted to say, as we did in New York, we've used the beacon strictly for informational. So of walking by the geofence, and all of a sudden you get a schedule for the Staten Island ferry. So, there could be potentially applications with My San Jose, that could leverage that beacon technology. And I just want to say, when we originally went to do the installation, working with AT&T in the city for 7 trees and the tennis courts, it came up as, can we do this?
Sure.
So we ended up putting together in a relatively short period of time a data-driven button that allows that control. But that control could easily be integrated into a My San Jose, so they could go to a tennis court, schedule, turn on. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a button per se. Right. But
Sure.
That's what we ended up doing.
That's cool. Thank you. I have a question for staff off of what Mayor Liccardo and Vice Mayor Jones were saying. In terms of use cases or just kind of a framework for bringing all this information. And I was listening to, I forget what I was listening to, but I understand that LA has some sort of, open source software program code on something like GitHub or something like that, where everybody who has to like deal with the city has to kind of mesh their software into the kind of the base code that LA has put out. So everybody who's using smart city sensors or whatever, the information is being poured back into LA's platform so they can easily disaggregate the information. Do we have something similar to that, or is that?
No, we're not taking that approach at this point. There are a number of cities and conglomerates of cities that are looking at open source code, and GitHub is a standard repository for any coder, open source or otherwise, as a way of making that code available for the community, or internally or externally. And that's part of the platform discussion that Keshav was looking at. Should we be collaborating with other cities? What kinds of platforms do we need? And now we're crossing over between IoT and data, and they do intersect very deeply. At this point, part of what we want out of the reference architecture is to make some of those decisions, not necessarily on platform A or platform B, but what are the characteristics that we need, both in terms of connectivity, in terms of sensor capabilities, in terms of how it integrates with data, and its openness as we either do RFPs or enter into agreements with other either vendors or consortiums that are out there. But we're in communication with a number of other cities that are experimenting with this. The difficulty with any open source platform like that is how do you maintain it, how do you keep scaling it, how do you keep it current with all of the different technologies that are out there. And so In my mind, it's likely to be a combination of things for a while, and we may have to be reliant on something beyond something that we code ourselves, because it's very difficult to, for us as a city to be running alongside these technologies, especially in the area of IoT, where it's still very wild, wild west, and we're going to be heterogeneous in a lot of things, including connectivity, for a while to come. So long story short, we're not using that approach, but we are using our architecture to inform how we would move forward.
Sure. Okay, and then I guess last question. I saw that this is a 24-month pilot. So after 24 months, the Wi-Fi goes down, the lights don't sense anymore, or whatever. And I guess it's more a question for my colleagues. Just we're entering into a pilot with Ubiquia and AT&T. We may, find that we really enjoy this, and we've developed a relationship, and they've served a number of use cases for us. And then my understanding is, if we wanted to say, well, let's keep this, we have to go to an RFP procurement process that's kind of open. So I don't know how that works, or just something to consider for the council. Is there some sort of efficiency where once we say that we've identified that we like them, we can just go with them? Or conversely, is that the point, that we have this process so that once we've learned more about lights and nodes, we open up to the universe and ask better questions of all the possible applicants? So it's just, I think there's like a lag, right? An 11th month RFP process or something like that. That's probably a good question. So after 24 months, we stop, and then we kind of have to open the RFP out. We wait like a year for the lights or the Wi-Fi to go back on. Is that right?
Well, if you look back at the whole purpose of the demonstration project, it was for the city to get information about what it might want. And it was for the purpose of testing out items so that it could narrow what it wanted. And because the city needs to be transparent and the city needs to also be accountable, it needs to go through a competitive process. My understanding is that the innovation group has also come up with a process that I think may also work in order to deal with this type of issue, in that they do an RFP, actually, initially, for the pilot project, which means they do the competitive process up front, so that if, in fact, the pilot works, they've gone through the competitive process already, and then that they can go then move forward. That's been sort of the issue with the pilot project, is that it actually it doesn't match our competitive process, which is why it doesn't work to work with them solely, because there are other people out there who may be able to do a better job, a more efficient job, and that's why there is a competitive process necessary element in all of that.
All right. No, that's good. I just put it out there because from a user community standpoint, it seems like an issue. But before Councilmember Davis leaves, can I get a motion to accept all reports today before we close up?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, perfect. We've done what we need to do today. Any final comments? Is there an open forum? I have no cards. Anything? Anybody? No? Once, twice? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.